professional solutions to money, relationships, wellness, and more. Shine a light onto your day and into your life. Power Your Life with Dr. Joanne White.
Welcome to Power Your Life. I'm Joanne White, your host, and my first guest spent 18 years on the editorial staff at Money Magazine and was a Wall Street correspondent. Plus, he's written dozens of highly acclaimed books, including Everyone's Money Book and Master Your Money. He's known as the Money Answers Man, and he's here with us right now. Jordan Goodman, welcome.
Great to be with you, Dr. White.
It's my pleasure. You have so much information. We talked on the phone, and I'm trying to keep it all straight in my head. So one of the most important things is people are piling up their credit card debt,
Right.
and the interest is getting higher. So what do they need to do to make sure that they're getting the best deal and they're still being able to pay off their cards?
It is a huge problem. There's about $800 billion in credit card debt now. The average interest rate's about 14%.
That's amazing.
It
and
really is.
Higher, too.
Well, that's the average. There's a lot of people paying 22, 25,
Right.
30% if you miss your payments. So it's a real problem for an awful lot of people. So there's some specific things they can do. There are better credit cards to be had out there. You don't have to put up with these ridiculously high
Right.
rates. There's a free website, creditcardperks.com, for example, with all the best deals.
Creditcardperks.com. Okay,
Correct.
good.
And so what you do is get a card where you're going to get the most rewards, or whether it be frequent flyer points or hotel points or whatever it may be. Concentrate your spending on that one card so you get the most rewards. So that's one thing you can do. If you have a lot of credit card debt at high interest rates, the banks are not going to work with you for the most part. They love getting high interest rates.
Right, it helps them.
So the best thing to do in a case like that is to use a high-quality, non-profit credit counseling organization, because they have deals with these creditors you can't possibly get on your own, maybe 6-7% interest, something like that.
So do they actually work with people regardless of what kind of monies they're owing? Or
Correct. I mean, the minimum's like $1,000, and they'll go,
and then it goes
no
up.
limit on the upside as to how much credit card debt you
'cause-
can be in.
Okay,
Yeah.
and they do the negotiations.
It's already done. They've already got deals with all the Bank of America
you
and
just-
Citibank.
okay.
You're fitting into an existing system, basically.
So they've already worked it out, and you just fit into it, and then it lowers your debt, and you're paying them really.
Correct. So they'll close down those accounts in which you've got debt, consolidate it all into one payment. You make one payment a month to them, and then they pay the creditors, and in 2, 3, 4 years you're out of debt, as opposed to the rest of your life being in servitude, basically.
But also, it's so much easier to just focus. If you have all these different credit cards out there, you're just focusing on
Once a
one.
month.
Right. So it
Correct.
makes it easier, and you don't forget.
Correct. So my favorite place is called Cambridge Credit Counseling, and their website is cambridgecredit.org. They've helped over 1 million people in this circumstance.
Wow,
So that's a way to get out of debt.
That's important. Now, you and I were also talking about how college tuition is skyrocketing,
Right.
and it doesn't seem that there's going to be any solution to lower it.
No.
And my experience in working with some college students and their families is that once they graduate, they can't be out on their own. And you talked about how it's changing the whole way people are living.
Changing society, it is. Over 50% of the people who recently graduated are going back and living at home, what I call the boomerang generation. They keep coming back.
I like
You
it.
think you're going to have the empty nest, it doesn't last 4 years, and then they come back. And the average debt's about $29,000 coming out of college. Many people way more than that.
Right.
50, 100, 150,000. And then if you add graduate school, that's another 2 or 300,000.
And that also depends on the kind of university or college you're going to and what kind of loans you're getting, right?
It's huge. So people aren't saving enough up front, so they're having to borrow an awful lot. And it's not only them, the parents are borrowing against
So
their home
everybody,
equity.
right, it's the whole family.
grandparents are borrowing for the kids. It's really a mess. So there are some things you can do. The first thing is to consolidate. If you've got a whole bunch of different loans in a bunch of different places, consolidate it all into one loan at the lowest possible interest rate. And there's a website to help you there, consolidatecollege.com. There's a federal program through the Department of Education, which can be kind of hard to figure out how to get through. Consolidatecollege.com can show you exactly how to do it, and that'll save you
So
some.
what do? They walk you through the process?
They actually help you fill out the forms, and there's a lot of tricky things to make sure you do it right.
Right.
Because you can only do it once, and you got to do it right the first time. But you can get, if you have a bunch of different loans at different interest rates, maybe consolidate it all at 3% or something like that.
And what's the typical loan right now for college?
Well, $29,000 is the average that people are graduating with. But as we said, a lot of people
And what's
have a
the
lot more.
percentage rate that they're paying?
3 is the lowest, 5, 6, 7, depending on what it was. If you have private loans, those tend to be much higher than the federal loans. It
Right.
could be 8, 9, 10%. So consolidate it all into one and save yourself a bunch of money.
Seems that consolidation is the way to go, too.
It is.
with
And there's
all
also
this.
something called the Income-Based Repayment Program, the IBR program.
What's that?
which is a program started in 2009. If you meet certain criteria, you pay on your loans for 10 years on time, and then after that, no matter how much you owe, the rest of it is forgiven.
Wow.
So that's saving you 20 years off your student loans.
And what kind of criteria do you have?
If you work in the nonprofit sector, if you work for the state, local, or federal government, or if you're what's called a hardship provision. You're way more debt than your income.
So there are many different ways to do it.
And the consolidatedcollege.com people can show you how that program
All right,
works.
so they're really helpful, and they'll lead you through the whole process.
Absolutely, you bet.
Mortgages, okay. So people have high mortgages, and you and I were talking about initially they're paying off their interest. They think they're paying off their principal,
No.
but for years they're paying their interest. How can they get through it faster and smarter?
Well, the good news is there is a program, there's a strategy.
I love this. So many strategies.
The mortgage optimization strategy, which literally can allow you to pay your mortgage off in about 5 to 7 years instead of 30 years on the same level of income you've got today. Now, this is not something your bank is going to tell you about, okay?
So don't go to your banks,
No,
right?
you can go and say, I want mortgage optimization. They will have no idea what you're talking about, frankly.
Okay.
And there is a website for this as well, truthinequity.com. And basically, this is how it works.
Yeah.
You use a home equity line of credit, a HELOC as they call it, which is at a lower rate, it's tied to the prime rate. You get about 3% rate on that today. You use it almost like your checking account, and you get your first mortgage into the HELOC, and you keep your income, which would normally be sitting in a checking account, in the HELOC. Every day you're making progress on the principal, as opposed to with a 30-year mortgage, you're making very little progress on the principal for 15 years or so. So every month that goes by, this is going to be amazing to you, every month that goes by, your mortgage payment goes down as you pay your mortgage off faster until the whole thing is gone in 5 to 7 years.
Which is incredible because firstly you get out of it faster, and the rate is lower, and it's ingenious.
It works. Now again, this is something banks aren't going to tell you about, but it's been working for a lot of people. It takes some discipline. There are 3 things you need to make this work. You got to have positive equity in your house because you're going to be borrowing against that in the HELOC. You have to have a decent credit score, maybe 680 or higher, to qualify for the HELOC. You got to have some positive cash flow because that's going to make it work.
Okay, so that's wonderful. You are filled with information. Thank you so much.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Ahead, looking to buy a house? After the break, we'll have some tips to help lessen the stress of looking for a new home when Power Your Life returns. Stay tuned.